Welcome to the Money Watch Show. It's Tuesday, January 21st, and we are here answering financial questions and trying to get ahead of the questions we think you're asking, because that way I can kind of get a feel for what you would like us to cover. And one question that I have been receiving from maybe not a lot of you listeners, but maybe from some of the children of some of our listeners was about, over the holidays, about debt. And so I created a little bit of a resource here about how would I actually give people the advice about paying down debt? Now, Mark Talercio, my co-host, executive producer, and the king of all things, Jill on Money. Mark, this is the time of year where people have these resolutions, and a big one is paying down debt. And, it occurred to me that given how much the interest rate level has risen over, say, even just the last 5 years, it's so much harder to pay down debt. And people are struggling with it for long periods of time. So what's your experience? What's your debt experience?
Thankfully, I don't have much debt experience other than, obviously there's mortgages, but I don't consider that bad debt. When I graduated college, I had minimal debt. When did I graduate? Early 2000, I think I graduated 2000. So at the time I had, maybe $12,000, $15,000 total. So doable.
Were you scared of debt? As a construct, were you like, oh my God, I don't want to be in debt? Were people talking about it as much when you were younger?
I used to be very, very scared of debt. Even the idea of getting a mortgage. I remember when Amanda and I were buying our first apartment, it was a stressful process for me. She had no problem with it. She had owned property before me. But I was kind of terrified of debt, especially.
How'd you get over it, though? That's a good thing, because we meet so many people, we talk to so many people who are terrified by it.
I don't know. She probably helped. She probably told me to get over it. That's probably what happened. and I think doing the show with you, I've learned that there is debt that's okay. That's good debt. And there's debt that's bad debt, which isn't okay.
It's very hard, if you're so scared of debt, to convince yourself that even in your rational brain that you say, oh my God, I know this is fine. But it's scary still. So I think that when you are in debt, one of the good things for me to remind you is that some of the people, when I was a financial planner 100 years ago, some of the people who walked in with kind of scary debt levels, once they got religion around paying it off, they became amazing savers. So there is something about being in this pickle that I want to give you some hope, which is, you know what? Sometimes you're in this place, it's going to get better. It is going to get better. One of the things I thought might be helpful would be to air a segment that ran last week on CBS Mornings. I really just wanted to kind of tackle this idea of paying down debt. Let's do that. Let's air the segment. Your anchors are Tony DeCopel and Adriana Diaz on CBS Mornings. When we come around the back of it, I want to talk a little bit more about the emotional aspect of how you pay down debt and when I think you can slide a little bit. So let's air that segment now.
In today's Money Watch, we are talking about paying down debt. According to a new survey, the average American household has more than $175,000 in debt. Now, before you have a heart attack, that does include mortgages and credit cards, student loans, auto loans, all the loans. And nearly half of all Americans with credit cards report carrying a balance month to month. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to help. Jill, good morning.
Good morning.
So you say you have 3 tips for people. What are they?
You know the old saying, if you don't ask, you don't get. I think many people are scared to talk to a company where they owe that company money. So if you've got a credit card balance and the interest rate is really high, you can call. You could say, hey, is there a better deal for me? And, there's a lot of evidence that in about 3/4 of the times that people make these calls, they get a lower rate. They get a little reprieve. So call and ask. The second idea is to consider a 0% balance transfer. This means, let's just say I have $5,000 on one credit card. It's 29%. And you move your entire balance to a new card with a company, and it's a 0% finance charge. But it's only for 12 months. So this is only good if you can pay that bill off within 12 months, but it's really effective. And finally, I would just say this. When you look at all of the things that are out there. I want people to really consider, what can I do to make sure I don't mess up? You can automate all of these accounts. You make sure you have a certain amount of money going every single month, even if it's just the minimum amount. You don't want to get charged interest or late fees. Set it up automatically. Increase that amount every month. It will help you dig out, especially if this credit card balances.
It's incredible what happens if you miss that payment.
Yes.
And then you get dinged with that huge amount. And that 0% balance transfer is so valuable because if you have a $5,000 or $10,000 balance, that huge percentage rate of interest is really going to hurt you over the course of the year. So all really great stuff. If you have an extra $100 at the end of the month to pay something down or go out to dinner, how do you prioritize the uses of it?
Well, obviously, we want to go out to dinner first. No, I'm just kidding. Don't go out to dinner. So listen, the priority of credit pay down and debt pay down is usually about, for me at least, I think is highest interest to lowest interest. So that will usually mean your credit card balance, then an auto loan, then a student loan. And I think that with credit cards, it's really important to note that these interest rates have gone up precipitously in just the last 5 years. So right now, because we are in a high interest rate environment, the average credit card balance is being charged about 22%, and that's the average. Some go way higher. Just 5 years ago, we were at 14%. So the more that you can really get that payment automated and get that paid down and make that a priority. I know some people are like, oh, it's just a teeny amount. I just want to get rid of it. I'm all about high interest to low interest.
So, Mark, one of the things I learned when researching this segment, especially about the credit card aspect of it, is that more than half of people who hold credit card debt, 53%, they've been in that credit card debt for at least a year. And so even though during that segment, I was like, just pay down the highest interest debt. If you need a little bit of a win, I feel like I can give you permission to pay off, the one that's a little bit lower just to get rid of a particular card debt. Are you okay with that, Mark?
Oh, I'm totally okay with that. That's like a big psychological hurdle. It gives people a big sense of satisfaction.
And also remember, it took you a long time to accumulate whatever debt you have. It's going to take a lot of time to pay it down. All right. So one question that we didn't get to was the idea that paying off a mortgage is something that we hear about all the time. And when we came off the air, Adriana said to me, like, my God, my mom really wants to pay off her mortgage. What do you think? So, Mark, check this out. Right now, 55% of all outstanding mortgage loans are under 4%. So certainly for the people who have under 4% loans, paying down that debt makes no sense. But even if you had a 7% note right now, I don't know if this is a really great idea.
I'm over here raising my hand, by the way.
I know. I mean, one of the problems that we have that we talk to people about is that when you pay off a mortgage, you are also robbing yourself of important liquidity, access to your money. And so, Mark, how is it that we can help people kind of get over the emotional satisfaction of paying down that debt, but also to say, like, hey, wait, you might want that money. We've been hearing more and more from adult children of older people who are like, yeah, my parents have a paid off house, but they have no money to live on. So we have to kind of figure out the liquidity, the access to your money part of it, not just, oh my God, you've kicked butt because you've been in the market, right?
Yeah, I mean, some people, I think there's a group of people that you're just probably not going to convince. There's nothing that you can say that's going to convince them, especially when it comes to mortgage debt. Some people are just like hell bent on getting rid of it. If you have a high interest rate right now, I wouldn't be thinking about putting any extra money towards it because at some point, I don't know when, but at some point you're going to refinance. So it kind of defeats the purpose. And especially if if you're young and you just bought a new house and you have these high interest rates, odds are it's probably not going to be the last move of your life. So I would just pump the brakes a little bit.
Really hang on to your money. So Mark, when do you think that we would start talking about bankruptcy as a process? Because look, there's a reason why the United States has a bankruptcy code, because it does help people get a clean slate. Not everything gets discharged, by the way. You don't get out of your child support or your alimony or, I was reading up on this before the segment, parking violations and fines. I thought that was fun. Student loans, important. Federal and state income taxes owed. And, a bankruptcy stays on your credit report for up to, 7 to 10 years or something. Obviously, it can really make it impossible to get new credit. Even insurance and rental of an apartment, it can hurt you. But when do you think people should think about a fresh start for real?
It's kind of like the last resort that there is. It's not, I don't want to think of it as a get out of jail free card, but when you've tried everything that you possibly can try and you just can't get ahead of the game and it's, if everything is snowballing downhill, that's when you got to start thinking about this stuff.
A lot of times we hear about these terrible situations after divorces where, let's say you get divorced, you split your assets, right? And then you're on your own and then something comes up. And you have like some medical emergency and you plow through your savings and you do this and you do that. Like the reason that people declare bankruptcy usually, job loss, medical debt, and divorce. Those are your big three. So I think if you've gone to a really rough patch and you just can't seem to crawl out, I agree with Mark. It is time to talk to an attorney who does bankruptcy. I am not suggesting anyone who has credit card debt go out and declare bankruptcy, but I am saying sometimes you have to basically raise your hand and say, I really need help. I can't do this. And the tax code can give you that help. Frankly, in a lot of ways, is if your debt levels have been building up over time and then something bad happens, maybe access to credit isn't that important. Maybe there are many other important parts of what you need to think about before you start piling on new debt. So look, I think that if you got a question about debt, if you're one of those folks who feels like, I really am tempted to pay off the home mortgage. Or if you're dealing with something where you're trying to juggle the priorities, give us a holler. Go to JillOnMoney.com, click the Contact Us button, and write us a note. And if you want to join us live, just check the box marked as everything else. While you're on the website, don't forget, sign up for the free weekly newsletter. Subscribe to our other podcast, Jill on Money. Subscribe to Jill on Money Live. That's where you have access to quarterly live webinars and bonus audio and video content and the entire back catalog, all for $45 for the next 12 months. All right, that's it. That's the program. Mark Telaris is our co-host and executive producer, king of all things web. We are distributed by Paramount Global. We drop our episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen. And of course, try to lift someone up. Change your work, change your wealth, change your life. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you on Thursday.
Paramount Podcasts.